Okay. All set, Jake?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. So for those of you that don't know, my name is Travis Jordan. I've met most of you guys at the clubhouse a little over a month ago now. For the last couple of weeks I was there. So most of you guys know me, but I am I work for the Advancing Tobacco Free Communities Grant, also known Reality Check Grant. I talked a little bit about Reality Check with you guys at the clubhouse. Probably didn't give you too much information, kind of, because I didn't know how much I would see you guys. But it's good to be back. I was out of the game for about a month. So this is my first presentation back. So bear with me if I screw up a little bit, all right? This is my first practice run again. Okay, so, but I'm obviously going to talk about ENDS, which is electronic nicotine delivery system. So also known as vapes and e-cigarettes. And that's what the presentation will be about today. So again, if you guys have any questions or anything like that, don't be afraid to ask me. If you want to ask me during, if you want to ask me after, write your question down or something so you remember it at the end. There's a couple videos that we'll go through. They're not too long, so you guys hopefully don't get too bored and you stay locked in for the whole presentation. It's about 25 slides, but we'll get started right now. So we start off with the video. Can everybody see this? So if I go to full screen, we should be good to go.
Yeah, I can see you're good.
You guys have sound? This should have sound right here once he starts talking.
Hello.
Yep.
Growing up so fast. Yes, you're 14 years old already. Jesus. I can't wait to be with you. I think about it all day at work. I want you so much. But on this day, in a few years, you'll be ready. Happy birthday to Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear little one. Happy birthday to you.
All right. What did you guys think of that video? So, does anybody know who that person? Obviously, that was an actor. It wasn't a real person. Somebody was acting. But what was he acting as? Does anybody know? No one? No one knows who that guy was trying to portray?
No.
Cigarettes.
Yeah, so it's something to do with cigarettes. So that guy would be like the head of Marlboro or head of a large cigarette company or tobacco company. So he's a tobacco executive, maybe like the president or CEO of a major tobacco company. And the reason we show that because what was he was talking about trying to reel kids in, right? Wishing them a happy birthday when they're very young, obviously, because he's portraying a CEO that would prey on younger kids to get them to become addicted to smoking and addicted to their product that they sell because it gives them more and more money, right? So that leads us right into this quote, which is today's teenager is tomorrow's potential customer, which is by Philip Morris, which was also a major tobacco company back in 1981. But the reason we still use this, I know it's an older quote from 1981, but the reason we still use it still rings true to today because they still do the same exact tactics that they were doing back in the 1980s and even before that, and trying to get young kids addicted because if tobacco is used as intended, it ends up killing off half of its users. So 1 in 2 people will die from using tobacco. So they know that, the CEOs know that, and they need to get replacement smokers for all the people that die off, right? Because they don't want to lose profit. They don't want to lose money. So if they know if they can get 13, 14, 15-year-olds hooked at that very young age, they'll have them for their entire lifespan if they're addicted to nicotine because it's very hard to break, right? It's hard to break the addiction. Rather than getting someone that's hooked when they're 40 or 50 years old, they only get 10 years of profit rather than if someone was 14 years old and they get 60 years of profit, right? So a lot more money if they invest in the younger generation, even though they're not supposed to. But we'll talk about more of that later. So we're into a little bit of a graph. This one is showing annual deaths in the US. So the first one is from AIDS, which 13,000 people die in the US from AIDS each year, 88,000 from alcohol, almost 38,000 from car accidents, 64,000 from illegal drugs, almost 16,000 from homicides, just over 44,000 from suicides. And then does anybody know the number, or rough estimate of how many people die on average from tobacco in 1 year in the US? No one? So it's actually more than all of these numbers added up. I believe I did the numbers. I think it's 200 and some odd thousand if you add up all of those, whereas tobacco related deaths are 480,000 annually. So each year, 480,000 people die roughly from a tobacco related illness, which could be cancer, or we know there's many types of cancer that's caused from it, right? So pretty crazy numbers there. But if we move forward into the next slide, this common misconceptions about e-cigarettes amongst youth. So these are kind of what doing all the presentations that I've done throughout the last 2 years roughly, and just speaking with people at fairs and events and tabling, this is kind of some of the stuff that we've heard, whether it be from students, whether it be from teachers or parents, some common misconceptions about e-cigarette use. Nicotine isn't that bad for me, but we do know it's very addicting, right? And once you get hooked, it's very hard to break. It's just flavoring. We've heard that plenty of times, especially when flavors were a lot bigger deal than they are now, because there are some regulations, which we'll talk about that as well. It's just water vapor. We know that's not always true either. I don't vape, I Juul. There's really no difference in vaping and Juuling. A Juul is a type of vape. So saying that doesn't really make much sense. My vape says it's nicotine free, which we know even if it says nicotine free, it's not always completely nicotine free. Because if you guys know, some of the cereals that you buy might say sugar-free cereal, but if you actually look closely at the ingredients, there is usually a very small amount of sugar inside of that cereal, because the FDA, your Food and Drug Administration, says they're allowed to have up to a certain amount of sugar and still call it sugar-free, which is the same exact concept with your nicotine in your vapes. They can have up to a certain amount and still call it nicotine-free, even though there's still nicotine inside it. And then I use a Juul that doesn't have nicotine. We've heard that before, which all Juul pods contain nicotine. So that isn't true either. But those are just some common misconceptions that we've heard from kids, students, parents, teachers, about students, all across the board. Again, the next slide ends the building blocks. So this is what the whole presentation will be about today, is electronic nicotine delivery system, also known as your vapes or your e-cigarettes. There's a list on the right of, if you go from pen down to vape pen, those are all, so you have vape, e-cig, cig-alike, box mod, personal vaporizer. Those are all different types of vapes and e-cigarettes. There's a whole bunch of them out there. When they first came out, there was no regulation, so anyone could create any kind of vape or e-cigarette that they want, and that's why you had so many different types of vapes, because there was no real restriction on what it had to be. And then at the bottom, Juul, Soren, Blue Smoke, and Bow. Those are your main brands of e-cigarettes. Those are the more popular ones, especially when they first came out. As we know, everyone knows of Juul. Soren, Blue, Smoke, and Bow, those are some more popular ones as well. So a difference between brands, and then just nicknames and different names and types of vapes. The definition of it is a battery-powered device that heats a solution of liquid nicotine, other chemicals, creating emission, which is then inhaled. That's pretty self-explanatory, right? A battery, so it's electronic version of your cigarette, but we'll talk a little bit more about the details of it as we go through. Nicotine is extracted from tobacco and mixed with a mixture of propylene glycol, flavoring, coloring, and other chemicals. Does anybody know what propylene glycol is used in? Use it, I'll give you a hint, it's used in your cars quite frequently. It's one of the main ingredients inside of this. Comes in a big, I think, pink jug. Sometimes it's blue, I think, right at the gas station. So it's antifreeze. Propylene glycol is one of the main ingredients in antifreeze. And that's also one of the main ingredients inside of your e-cigarette. So that's kind of a scary thought. Moving forward, other chemicals that may be found in your vape juice, as I just talked about, propylene glycol, diethylene glycol is also found in it, very similar, a key ingredient, again, used in antifreeze. Acrolein, used as a pesticide to control algae, weeds, bacteria, and mollusks. It's also used to make other chemicals. Nitrosamines can cause cancer. They're volatile and highly flammable organic compounds, and some have been used in medication, but it's all kind of on how much is inside of it, right? That's where it gets dangerous, if there's too much of something. And if the FDA wasn't regulating it, then you have no idea really how much is inside it. And then formaldehyde, which is a chemical widely used to make home building products. Formaldehyde is also used in morgues, where they keep dead bodies to preserve the dead body because it's a preservative. So that's why they put it inside of your e-cigarettes to have a longer shelf life, so they can sell it, leave it on the shelf. If it doesn't sell right away, they still can leave it on there for a long period of time and still be able to sell it because the formaldehyde is preserving the liquid. I grew up on a dairy farm. I always talk about this story. In Canton, I grew up on a large dairy farm where formaldehyde was used almost every single day on the animals, because the cows would go get milk, they would turn and walk back to their where they would stay for the night. And as they're walking through the alleyway, they would walk through these formaldehyde foot baths. They're this blue liquid. And I was told never to go near it because it was so acidic and so dangerous that if you got it on your skin, it was going to cause severe burns to your skin. Formaldehyde can also cause chest pain, shortness of breath, coughing, nose and throat irritation. So you can imagine it's not safe to breathe this stuff in, especially at high amounts. And they're also PETA. You guys are familiar with PETA. They're trying to ban formaldehyde on farms because they know it can be dangerous to the animals. It is great for cleaning the hooves off. That's why we used it on the cows, because it basically gets rid of everything that's on the hooves, and you can imagine those get very dirty. And it is safe as long as there's no cuts or anything on the cow, but if they do have a cut or something, you can imagine it's going to burn pretty bad. So that's kind of why PETA has stepped in and saying we don't really want it on farms. It's also not good for human contact, like I said, to go near it. I was told never to go near the formaldehyde foot baths because they were so acidic, and they can cause burns on your skin if you get any of it on you. So I didn't go near that stuff, but I saw it all the time. But one of the main ingredients inside your e-cigarette. A couple other things, it can cause heart problems. Breathing in vapor can cause tightening or narrowing of the arteries, which could lead to a heart attack. That's kind of the same thing with your cigarettes as well. Breathing in traditional cigarette smoke tightens or narrows your arteries, which could then lead to a heart attack. Same thing with your vapes and your e-cigarettes. Lung function, even if vaping has fewer bad effects than traditional cigarettes, vaping still reduces lung function. If you skip down to the bottom, studies have shown lung cell damage from vape juice, including those that have not nicotine and those that do not. So some that have nicotine and the ones that don't, they still both cause your lung function to dwindle, right? Vape devices are blowing up, literally. If you're thinking about health concerns of vaping, you're usually thinking about the chemicals in them, but also that they can explode when you're using them. We'll talk a little bit about this, actually, I think on the next slide. Vape devices and e-cigarettes blowing up literally inside of people's pockets and hands and whatnot, and causing severe injuries. So like I said, this is your next slide. I won't click on the link, but if you click that link there in the top right corner, that brings you to a page that I found. It's over 50 pages long, and you scroll and scroll and scroll. It's 50 pages long of just examples of vape devices and e-cigarettes blowing up when people were using them. Just like this list, it just goes on for 50 pages. And that's just a couple examples of vape devices blowing up. So if you read a couple here, e-cigarette explodes in North Portman's short pocket, leaving severe burns. So he had to get skin grafting surgery and had third-degree burns. The next one, I know this is gross. Severe burns, skin graft needed to repair scrotum and leg because it was in his pocket. And it ended up catching fire and exploding in his pocket, which is, can't imagine how painful that was. The next one, man says e-cigarette battery ignited in his pants pocket without him knowing, and it caused severe burns to leg and groin. And then at the bottom there, August 6, 2018, charging e-cigarette battery explodes, causing house fire. So someone must have left their e-cigarette or their vape charging back at home, thinking it was no big deal. The battery malfunctioned and ended up causing the whole house to catch fire. So it's pretty dangerous stuff because Like I said, they weren't regulated at the time, and even when they were, the batteries can corrode because of the liquids that you're being put inside there next to a heating coil, next to a battery. It's just a dangerous game to play. If you watch this video, you watch the guy at the counter, you'll see what happens here in a second. We'll watch it again after too. So you can see it catches fire right in his pants pocket. And he kind of freaks out and throws it on the ground, and it's still on fire when he throws it on the ground. Huge explosion, scared the guy carrying whatever that was on the cart, and it ends up rolling underneath the cart. And this guy actually had to get surgery again as well. I think he had the skin graft on his leg. Can you imagine how painful that was? So this next one is a video. I think it's 2 or 3 minutes long. Kind of let somebody else talk about what e-cigarettes are and how they kind of came about and some of the other stuff that's inside of them, so you're not just hearing me talk. It's kind of like a cartoon video. I think it's pretty interesting. Some parts are funny. So kick back and we can watch this video
here. People have been smoking for at least 7,000 years, but it wasn't until the 1800s that cigarettes became the smoke of choice, after machines were developed to mass produce them. 200 years later, in 2003, the electronic cigarette was invented in China. And since then, the use of e-cigarettes, also called vaping, has grown exponentially around the world. E-cigarettes are electronic devices that vaporize a flavored liquid. They all used to look like cigarettes, but now they come in many shapes and sizes. Many look like pens or small boxes called mods. What they all have in common is 1, a power source, usually a lithium battery. 2, an atomizer, which heats the e-liquid. 3, e-liquid or e-juice, which usually contains flavors and nicotine. And 4, a cartridge or tank, which is filled with e-liquid. Heating the e-liquid creates a cloud of vapor that looks like smoke, but without a lot of the lethal components contained in tobacco smoke. Many people assume e-cigarettes are safer than traditional cigarettes because they don't burn anything or create harm in the lungs. But it took almost 7,000 years for humans to realize that tobacco causes lung cancer, throat and mouth cancer, causes heart attacks and strokes, and damages the lungs. E-cigs, meanwhile, have only been around a little over a decade, so there just hasn't been enough to figure out the effects they have on your body. We do know that e-cigarettes deliver nicotine, just like the traditional cigarettes, causing increased heart rate and blood pressure. Nicotine also has powerful effects on the brain. It releases rewarding neurotransmitters in the brain, like dopamine, and changes brain chemistry. It is a stimulant, making people feel more alert, but when it goes away, people crave it even more. It can interfere with the body's own natural ability to make dopamine, and soon the user needs nicotine just to feel normal. The developing brain of teenagers is the most vulnerable to these effects. The powerful addictive nature of nicotine is so high that it's comparable to heroin and cocaine. Besides nicotine, e-cigarettes contain chemical solvents. When heated very high by some of the new e-cigarette devices, these solvents can be transformed into formaldehyde, which is a carcinogen. It causes cancer. These observations are concerning, but we really do not know what the long-term effects from inhaling these chemicals in your lungs will be. E-cigs contain many other chemicals to generate enticing flavors. In fact, there are almost 8,000 different flavors available today, so we don't know very much about many of them. We do know that some of the butter flavorings contain diacetyl, which is famous for causing popcorn. Popcorn lung is a disease called bronchiolitis obliterans, which is basically an irreversible scarring and destruction of the delicate lung tissue that can kill you. Strawberry and other healthy-sounding food flavors have been found to be cytotoxic, potentially cancer-causing as well. Vaping devices, or specifically the lithium batteries inside them, may explode unpredictably. Although uncommon, this happens frequently enough that e-cigarettes have been banned from luggage on airplanes. Unpredictable explosions have occurred in people's faces and mouths and resulted in serious injuries, including blindness. With these potential risks of e-cigarettes, the addictive nicotine, the exploding batteries, the carcinogenic liquids, why would any company want to use them? Sales of e-cigarettes approach $8 billion per year and are increasing. The truth is, tobacco cigarettes kill about 50% of people who use them. So tobacco companies, known as Big Tobacco, need to keep recruiting young people to become addicted in order to stay in business. Here are some actual documented quotes from tobacco executives. We don't smoke that shit. We just sell it. We reserve the right to smoke for the young, the poor, and the stupid. The base of our business is the high school student. The fragile self-image of the young person needs all the support it can get. Smoking may appear to enhance that self-image. Studies show that when people start to smoke in their teens, they become addicted. and stay smokers as they grow older, even those who swear they will never become addicted. Many of the same strategies that big tobacco used to hook your grandparents into smoking tobacco cigarettes have simply been modified and are being used today with an e-cig in place of a tobacco cig. E-cigarettes come in candy and dessert flavors like Skittles, gummy bears, and vanilla cupcake, directly aimed at teens. Ads always show thin, beautiful people vaping. Even the strategic use of humor is being successfully used to get customers on their side. The bottom line is that we are all faced with important personal choices every day. We don't yet know everything we need to know to make informed decisions about many things, but we can resist being manipulated. Take your time in making your own personal decisions. It can make all the difference.
So I just think that's a neat little video, something different for you guys. You're not hearing from me the whole entire time, but that video is a little bit older because now, as you know, the flavors, there's been flavor bans, flavor restrictions. So talking about the 8,000 different flavors, I think it said in that video, it's obvious some of that stuff has changed. But the idea was there when they first came out with the flavors was to get exactly what they were talking about, is to get the younger kids hooked. So they could have them for life, just like the guy in the very first slide that I showed you, the first video, the CEO, the actor playing the CEO, wanting replacement smokers, teenagers, to replace the people that die off when they're older. So they knew if they came out with all these crazy flavors that kids like, it would be easier for them to get them addicted. Other health risks of vaping: nicotine is highly addictive and can affect the developing brain. Even some nicotine-free e-cigarettes have been found to contain nicotine, which I talked about in the first couple slides. Some substances found in e-cigarette vapor have been linked to an increased risk of cancer. Teens who vape are more likely to begin smoking cigarettes, and they end up becoming dual users, which is also a scary thought. So a lot of people say they are using e-cigarettes so they don't smoke cigarettes, but the studies have shown that it actually increases your likelihood of smoking cigarettes. Explosions and burns have been reported with e-cigarettes. Obviously, we showed the videos. That's a scary thought. Accidental exposure to liquid from e-cigarettes has caused acute nicotine poisoning in children and adults. So that's another thing people don't really think about. I didn't really think about it either until I started doing these presentations and taking this job. Is your pets or your younger siblings that have no idea what an e-cigarette might even be, if it's a 2-year-old or a toddler or a baby, but every time a baby picks something up, they always put it in their mouth, right? That's how they test everything out, especially when they're very young. So you can imagine if they got a hold of an e-cigarette or a Juul pod and they put it in their mouth, one thing, they could choke on it. Another thing is it's filled with nicotine, which is poison to them. And all it takes is a very little amount for them to feel sick and possibly have adverse health effects from it. So same thing with babies as your cats, your dogs, your pets, or anything like that. Vaping during pregnancy could harm a developing fetus, just as we know that smoking can cause problems with the baby. Vaping is the same idea. We don't know a whole lot about it because, like you said in the video, vaping is pretty new. But the more and more we find out, it's not showing good for it. But you give that more time, and I bet more comes out on that. So kind of enough about what they are. Now we're getting into the marketing side of it and how you guys are kind of affected as kids and students and youth, because the tobacco companies like to prey on you guys to get you guys hooked early so they can make more money. So this is from Brown and Williamson, another quote from 1972. I know it's an older quote again, still rings true today though. It's a well-known fact that teenagers like sweet products. We all know that. I know that's true. When I was your guys' age, one of the first things I would buy when I go into a gas station or convenience store is probably a soda and some kind of candy or bubble gum or something like that, right? Something sweet. So they know we like sweet products. Everybody knows that, and so does the tobacco company, and that's kind of what they've taken advantage of. So you watch this video here, kind of plays on that quote as well.
I'm going to be reviewing the Juul fruit medley pods. Really excited to try it. So here we go. Oh my god, it tastes like strawberries and like it's so sweet. 5 out of 5. I even have kind of a buzz, like I kind of feel lightheaded.
right? So that's kind of a scary thought at the end. She said, I kind of had the buzz. I feel lightheaded. And she just took one small inhale from it, right? So you can imagine taking a lot more than that. And all the nicotine rush that you get. And then they talked about, she said it was flavored strawberry, which they don't have that necessarily now, but that was a way to get them hooked when they first started. And once you become hooked to the nicotine, you're not necessarily addicted to the flavoring of strawberry, you're addicted to the nicotine. So even though they don't have all those crazy fruit flavors anymore, the kids and whoever else is still addicted to the nicotine, they're still going to go back to that Virginia tobacco or traditional tobacco flavor because they're still getting the nicotine, which is what the CEO and those major companies want. As long as they're making their money, they don't really care. Again, the package design should be geared to attract the youthful eye, not the ever watchful eye of the federal government. That's from Laura Lard in 1970, another major tobacco company, and this is what they said back then. So basically what they're saying is they want you guys to see their product and to buy their product and it to be flashy for you, to stick out to you. But they don't want the federal government coming down and getting them in trouble, right? Because they know what they're doing probably isn't right. It's not morally right to go after the kids, but they know that's what they're doing and that's what they continue to do. These are just some pictures of some examples of that. So if you look at the top left, those are some advertisements. You guys, I'm sure you've seen that at some of your Sunoco's or anything like that around Messina or wherever you live. The advertisements at the gas pump is one way. You might not even think about it. I didn't really think about it either, but it's a subconscious advertising. So you're seeing it without even really recognizing you're seeing it until later on in life. The one in the middle is a Logic advertisement, which was an e-cigarette, and then also the tobacco right above it. But notice that's on the bottom window, and that's there on purpose. The advertising people that come in for the tobacco companies will do that. They'll pay for certain spots in the store so it's viewed by certain people. And who's going to view that? Probably that little girl or that little boy that's only that height, right? Because the adult is looking at the secondary window, the top window. They're not necessarily looking at the bottom one, but that's where the kids are going to look. Subconscious advertising. Again, you might not even know what it is, but it's implanted in your brain at an early age. If you look at the bottom right, those are some examples of some candies in the background that are standing up, and then some of your cigarillos that are laid out in front of it. And they do the colorful packaging, the shiny packaging. They smell good, right? And they do this on purpose to try to entice you guys because it looks like your favorite candy or smells like your favorite candy. And then obviously bottom left, the Jewel Pods there are in the display case right next to your Reese's candy. So you go up to buy one Reese's candy, you might see the Jewel Pod and not have any idea what it is, but you might say, hey, mom or dad, what are these right next to it? So then it's already, again, that subconscious advertising, and you might not even realize it. Same players, new products. So the reason why I talk about this is since I'm advancing tobacco-free communities, obviously you think we talk about traditional cigarettes and tobacco, but now we talk about vapes because it's the same people that are putting it out there. Same ones that created, got your parents smoked, your grandparents hooked on smoking with cigarettes are now the ones that are creating e-cigarettes and vapes. So you have your Cool brand of cigarettes created the blue, Marlboro created the Mark 10 Elite, Camel created, I think that's the Bow or Blue. I'm not sure exactly which one that is, but so same players, just new products they've come out with. And then Marlboro as your Jewel Pods. I like this graph. I was looking at this again today. The reason I like this is because it shows not just kids, but it shows adults as well. And it shows traditional cigarettes compared to your e-cigarettes and your vapes. So if you look at the graph, your orange solid line is your cigarettes for youth. Your traditional cigarettes have been on a steady decline, basically have gone down since 2011, which is great. Even if you look at the green solid line, which is traditional cigarettes with your adults, that's also been on a pretty steady decline, which is also great. But then you turn around and look at the flip side. You look at the dotted line, which is your e-cigarettes. The green one is your adults. That's pretty much stayed steady. Hasn't really risen too much the whole time. But then you look at the orange one, it's all over the place and it's continuously going up and it's skyrocketed since 2017, which is what everyone is so worried about. Because a lot of people say, oh, e-cigarettes are for people that don't or used to smoke cigarettes and now they're adults that are switching over. Well, the stats are showing that's not true because the adult line hasn't really increased at all, but the numbers for your kids have skyrocketed. So it's a whole nother generation that's addicted to nicotine. This is from the 2020 National Youth Tobacco Survey. In 2020, about 1.8 million fewer U.S. youth are current e-cigarette users compared to 2019. So the last graph I just showed you ended in 2018. This is some newer data. So the numbers have actually gone down from last year, which is great, but it's still a very, very high number. So there's still a lot of work to do. However, 3.6 million U.S. youth still currently use e-cigarettes. Again, still a lot of work left to do. There's a notable uptick in use of disposable e-cigarettes by youth, which you guys might be familiar with the puff bars. Those are making a big swing right now because they weren't hit so hard with the regulations, as hard as regulations as some of the other stuff was. And then more than 8 out of 10 current youth e-cigarette users use flavored e-cigarettes. So again, like I said, still a lot of work left to be done. And that's why we're doing these presentations. Governor Cuomo announces New York State implements first in the nation ban on flavored e-cigarettes. So he was one of the first ones to ban it as a state. The flavors and everything like I talked about. So the FDA has kind of stepped in and limited the flavors, limited how they can advertise and market near schools, how they can use coupons, everything else like that. Cuomo was one of the first ones to ban it in New York State, which is great. But like we said, we still got more work to do. I think there's still stuff that can be left. Stuff that can be banned, but we'll talk more about it as we go here, I think. Yep, so as of May 18th, the sale of flavored vape products, including mint and menthol, ends across New York State. So that's kind of one of the flavor bans that I was talking about, not just your strawberry, your creme brulee, your apple flavored stuff, but also mint and menthol has been included in that, which is a nice addition because I don't know if you guys know it, and I won't go too much into it, but mint and menthol were advertised to African Americans, especially in New York City, because they were easier to get hooked on it. Low-income neighborhoods, that was another place where they went, and they would literally give out free menthol cigarettes to get people addicted to that and having to go back to buy that nicotine again. And just like that, they've got more profit. As of May 18th, tobacco products can no longer be sold at pharmacies across New York State, which is a great thing because to me it was kind of odd that you could go to your Walgreens or your Kinney's, which is your local pharmacy, and it's supposed to be there for help. You know, you can go to Kinney's and get your medication for bronchitis or whatever it is to help your cough, but yet you could also buy tobacco products and things that would harm your cough or harm your body. So to me, that didn't make much sense. You know, why were they allowing it to be sold in pharmacies in the first place? But that obviously came with time. That's now changed. So you can't just go into your Kinney's or your Walgreens or anything like that, a pharmacy, and buy tobacco products. They don't sell it anymore. As of July 1st, retailers in New York State can no longer accept coupons for tobacco and vape products or sell them using multi-pack price promotions. So that was kind of part of the marketing and advertising that I was talking about earlier, is that they're not allowed to advertise near schools. There's certain regulations there. Stores can't accept coupons for tobacco and vape products or sell them using multi-pack discounts. So less enticing for people that go in. If you can't get coupons on it, for it costs more money, it's going to be harder to buy. All of those kind of stemmed from the FDA, your Food and Drug Administration, along with our government. But they're the ones that have kind of stepped in and done a lot of the regulations. We've had some changes with our health commissioner too. I can't remember his name, I'm drawing a blank on it, but he stepped down kind of in the middle of the whole e-cigarette crisis, pandemic, whatever you want to call it. Now we have a new one. He's doing some pretty good work about it as far as I know so far, but it's still pretty early. So that's kind of it. That's all I really have for you guys. Like I said, my name is Travis. I work for Seaway Valley Prevention Council, as you guys know. The Reality Check and Advancing Tobacco-Free Communities Grant. The little blue mark there in New York State is divided up all by different counties, but the blue mark is the 3 counties that I cover, which is St. Lawrence, Lewis, and Jefferson County. So I've done this presentation, variations of it, across almost every school in St. Lawrence County, Jefferson, and Lewis County. So done it quite a few times. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And then this is the last slide with some information. If you guys ever need to get a hold of me about anything, or if you have any questions about a school project, maybe you're doing a project for your health class and you need some information about tobacco or e-cigarettes, don't be afraid to reach out to me. That's my email, cnatfc@svpc.net. Our phone number, you ask for me. And then our Facebook page, SVPC Tobacco Free. And then seenenouughtobacco.org is just another website, not related to the council as a whole, but kind of as a tobacco, fight against tobacco as a whole for New York State and nationwide. We use that website for a lot of our information and other things, activities and games and stuff that we find. But that's all I have. Jake, I don't know if you're going to get a little wrap up here for a takeover, but thanks. If you guys have questions, I know I probably didn't give you too much time for questions. If you have any questions, chime in right now, and I'll do my best to answer them. No questions? Don't make it too easy.
No questions? Nobody has questions?
Somebody's got to have one question.
Michaela has a question.
Awesome. Go ahead, Michaela.
I'm just trying to eat my pork chops.
Oh, I had pork chops for lunch today. No questions, guys? You're making it too easy on me. At least give me one.
I don't have a question.
Just a heads up, I can barely hear any of you guys.
Can't hear us?
He's at Pals, I think.
Oh.
But I have a question.
All right, go ahead.
So, according to the presentation that you gave us, would you say that vaping is worse than like cigarettes?
No. So vaping, I wouldn't say is worse than cigarettes. That's kind of been proven by, if you look at the Harvard studies, that was where I got one of the slides I had was from Harvard Medical. And they talk about how it's not as harmful as cigarettes, because if you look at traditional cigarettes, before it's lit is 4,000 chemicals. And then when it's lit, because of combustion and causing other chemicals to mix, is over 7,000 chemicals inside of a cigarette. And tons of those are cancer causing. So we know cigarettes are very deadly. They're very bad. We've done all the studies on them. There hasn't been enough time really to study the e-cigarettes and the vapes. So we don't have all the information, but as far as what we can see and what I've read and studied is that they're not as dangerous. But that's also basically taking a battle of the lesser evils. So, I've had parents tell me at tabling events that, oh, I bought my kid a Juul because at least they're not smoking cigarettes. Well, that's not the case, right? Because that's like saying, well, I gave my kid a bottle of vodka because they weren't, doing something else. Well, it's only alcohol or something like that. It's
still the same thing.
Right. Anything else?
Janelle has a question.
Janelle. Go ahead, Janelle.
I was just going to say you can get more points if you ask a question.
Oh, you guys just want the points.
Yeah.
But
Okay. I would have, but I don't really have any questions on this stuff. I know.
Wait, I actually have a
Go ahead, Larry.
Why would they target little kids now, like when they're young, if they can't buy that stuff? Saying as if they were to target adults because they would be able to buy that stuff now.
So your question was, why do they target younger kids? Because they're not basically of age to buy it, right? Because you have to be now 21 in New York State to purchase tobacco. Again, that's just to purchase it. You can have tobacco on you and you can use it, but you don't have to be necessarily 21, which is a whole nother topic. But you do have to be 21 to purchase it. But their idea behind that is to target the youth because they know there's always ways for kids, whether they're in school or out of school, college now, if you have to be 21, to go and purchase it. Or they know somebody else that's older that can purchase it. Or they get it some other way. But they know that if they want it bad enough, they're going to go try and get it, or they're going to try and have somebody else get it for them. So maybe they're not of age to purchase it themselves, but they might know somebody that's old enough to do it. And I know that sounds bad, but that is the sad truth of it. And that's kind of why they target the younger generation, because like I said in the beginning, they need those replacement smokers, because if they have, 60, 70, 80-year-old smokers that have been smoking their whole life eventually going to die off, right? And not have anybody else to replace them. They don't want a 50-year-old to start smoking. They want him when he's 20 years old to start smoking. So they have that extra 30 years of profit off of that person, because that's a lot of money. If you're spending cigarettes, even if you buy 1 pack a week, that adds up over 30 years or 40 or 50 years to a lot of profit for those CEOs of those companies. It's a great question, though. Anything else?
I have a
I
question.
have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Actually, she can go ahead. I'll go after.
Oh,
I think
okay.
it's Alyssa.
Would they try and target older people?
Would they try and target what?
Older people?
Yeah, I mean, they do that as well. It's not to say that they don't advertise to older people, but the majority of their advertising is to younger people because they want to have that longevity of profit, like I just said. So they don't want, they'll take the 50-year-old or the 40-year-old smoker, right? Because it's more money for them. They don't care. But at the same time, they want to get you hooked when you're 20 and get that extra 20 years of profit from you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Awesome. And then was it Michaela?
Yep.
Yeah. So I almost lost it, but will it just take one puff, like one puff of any type of nicotine, to ruin your brain, like from developing?
No, one puff probably isn't going to ruin your brain, but it's the start of something, right? So nicotine is very highly addictive. It's as addictive as heroin. So the one puff that could be all it takes for you to want to go back and go for the second puff or the third puff. And once they get that, then you might lead to, well, I've never bought it before, but now I want to buy it. So now you start to buy it, and then you're more apt to have it, even more so if you're in possession of it rather than your friend having it. So I wouldn't say one puff is going to ruin your brain, no, but it could lead to something more where you keep going back to it because you become addicted to it. And that's exactly what they want. And that's how they create these devices, and they create different types of nicotine. It's because they want you to take one hit. You only tried it at a party. You tried it with your friend because they had it. Oh, it's only one thing. It won't harm me. And it might not for the first time, but it's going to lead you to want to go back to it and keep going. And that's where it can really cause problems. Good question.
Why would people try it if they know what it does to them?
That's the ultimate question. I don't know if I necessarily have the answer for that.
False advertising.
Yeah, right. So why would they want to try it if they know what's bad for them? I think you're right. Most people do know what's bad for them. Not everybody. Some people might, especially when e-cigarettes came out, no one really knew what they were, especially when they first came out. So they're like, oh, it's not cigarettes, it's just vapor. I'll try it. So they might not have known exactly what the negative consequences were, but we're figuring that out now. And I think it is steering people the other way a little bit. But again, some people are already addicted and they can't stop now. Same thing with if people were addicted to cigarettes back then. If I had more time with my presentation, I would show you some of the older advertisements that they did with traditional cigarettes on your parents or on your grandparents, 40, 50 years ago. They paid off doctors to say that cigarettes were healthy. And they said that it would reduce your baby size, right? Not that it would make it unhealthy, but it would just make you have a smaller baby. And then back then, some people wanted the smaller baby. For a woman, it's the pregnancy wouldn't be as bad if it's a smaller baby, but they didn't know all the birth defects and everything else that would come with it. But tobacco companies were paying off these doctors and scientists to advertise it and portray it as, oh, it's healthy. Oh, you'll lose weight. Oh, your baby won't be as big. It'll curb cravings or whatever it is. That's how they advertise it. That's changed now a little bit. You can't advertise that way. Obviously, doctors would never do that now. But when it first started, back then, that's how they advertise it.
Yeah, I know. And I actually took a drug and alcohol class this year for college, and I saw an ad from when my parents were kids and stuff. And like one thing it said, like, breathe in the freshest air or whatever. They like did those things to like get you drawn in.
Yep. little sayings like that. They, make it portray it as cool. So the younger kids, well, if I smoke cigarettes, I'll be cooler. They do it. They put it in movies to portray, evil villains. A lot of them are portrayed as people who are smoking, right? Remember Captain Hook for Peter Pan at one time smoked a double pipe because back then it was seen as that was kind of not necessarily a negative thing, but more just almost a cool factor was the smoking. So that's why they did that. They made them seem more cool or more evil or mischievous. And they added it in movies. And then the more and more you see that, the more prone you are to falling victim to it as well. Anything else? Those are great questions, guys. Keep me on my toes.
I had a question that I put in the chat, but in case you didn't see it. So I know you talked about like the chemicals that go into e-cigarettes and regular cigarettes, but aren't there like metal components too?
Yeah, so before when they first came out before the regulations of the FDA, it was more so then than it is now. But before, and it's still there, a lot of when they did testing on the e-cigarettes and the vapes, before they were regulated, they were finding high traces amounts of nickel, copper, lead. So you guys know we've gotten rid of lead-based paint in the house because it's dangerous to have and to breathe in, but that was also inside of your e-cigarettes and your vapes. And some of the metals like Janelle just talked about, your nickel, copper, everything like that was also found in trace amounts. So small amounts of it, but all it takes is a very small amount. You wouldn't want to breathe in nickel anytime in your life otherwise. So why would you want to do it with an e-cigarette? But they are all in there for different reasons. Not necessarily good reasons, but reasons that help the tobacco company make more money. Nothing else? All right, guys. Well, you guys were a great little audience. I think we had a couple more than I expected, which is awesome. You guys asked some great questions. I hope you liked it. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, there's my information. If you guys need anything to reach out for school presentations or anything like that, or just general questions, don't be afraid to send me an email.
Thank you, Travis.
All right. Let me see if I can